Well, you know, if you're on a team, you share recipes. And so I got his recipe. And it's a really nice, semi-sweet, thick red sauce. And it's not bottled, it's made from, you know, actually cooking it. And lastly, I have a yellow sauce. That's a hard sell here in Georgia. But what I found, if I put it out these competitions and people come by, you know, I tell them, and that's a really popular honey mustard. If you don't say those 4 words, they ain't tried. And the problem is there's no honey in it, so that's a flat lie. But I'll serve it to them.
That's all right.
You know, and then I'll turn away. You know, I'll, you know, okay, and then I'll turn away, and I'll just give them 5 seconds, and I'll turn around, and I'll see them going, you know, like that. So I know, you know, that's a pretty good sauce. Mustard sauce is not real big in Georgia, but it's and that's all I have to say about
But
that.
those folks in South Carolina, they love their mustard sauce. They put it in rice.
Yeah.
Well, at Dreamland, we believe in the vinegar-based barbecue sauce, and it's definitely got a little bite. To me, it doesn't have a bite, but to most people that haven't tried it, you know, when they originally try it, they say, "Oh, that's got a little bite to it." If you take your little bottle home and make sure you heat it up because it changes the flavor of the sauce. We've got a whole bunch of spices and different stuff in there, and if you don't bring it to a boil before you eat it, it'll have a totally different flavor profile than if you heat it up. It blends all the mustards and stuff like that.
Buzz.
And it's definitely got a little bite to it. I've been eating it for 18 years, so to me, you know, I could open it up with my coffee in the morning. But
Okay, that's over one.
I don't enter a contest like these 2 guys. I really probably shouldn't be up here like these, or I should say 3 guys, except for the fact that I did train with Big Daddy in 1993. I'm probably one of 3 or 4 people that ever really trained with him is still with Dreamland. And it was the best ribs I ever cooked, and he watched a little black and white TV, kept chuckling at the soap opera he was watching, and went like this at me. I looked at his son, John Jr., and he said, "Flip the ribs, man." And Big Daddy went like this, and he's still laughing, watching TV, smoking a pipe. "What's that mean?" "Baste the ribs, man." We told him to do this, let's take them off. This is the best ribs I ever cooked, and the man let him watch.
That's exactly what happens when I cook with him.
I tell you what, it was fun to pull up in front of Dreamland in Tuscaloosa and see Big Daddy sitting out on the front porch, smoking his pipe and greeting everybody with a nod. You know, you'd have to pull some words out of him, but it was a pleasure going there a couple of times and watching him work. He was a great old guy. I loved him. Mr. Poe.
I'm thinking if you've been doing this for 40 years and I've been doing it 37, and you
Been on 20 of mine for barbecue.
okay,
There's
well,
20
still,
over
your
here.
hair is darker than mine.
Take my coffee.
Something to this Dreamland sauce. That being said, it's like before I got back into the barbecue industry, I would have friends of mine. I'm a big Alabama fan. Anyone who knows me knows that. And
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Go down and do
That's security. But anyway, I would always have them bring me, this is before you guys came to Roswell, I would always have them bring me Dreamland sauce back because I loved it so much. I mean, but barbecue sauce is such a regional thing. I mean, in Kansas City, you get into the sweeter sauces. You get here into Georgia, you get into a less sweet sauce with a little bit more spice. The Carolina's more of a vinegar sauce. I traveled with a guy when I was in the corporate world, and he loved barbecue. Me being in the barbecue business, the last thing I wanted to do was eat at a barbecue restaurant every day for lunch and every day for dinner the week that we traveled together. But as we journeyed from one end of the state to the other, you could see the sauces change as you went from the west to the east or east to the west, wherever it was. And by the time you got to this end of the state, even the coleslaw was red. That being said, I mean, you go out to Texas and theirs is more like a motor oil. Texas, west of the Mississippi, but what we do at our store, we don't put sauce on the meat. We give you the sauce on the side. It's an option. It's a condiment if you choose to use it. We do a sweet tomato-based sauce, which is probably, at least at our store, 21 more popular than our version of the North Carolina vinegar-based sauce.
So
But they're both good. It's just a personal preference.
do we all do family style ribs? Are there any baby backers in the group? Oh dear.
And St. Louis.
Yeah,
We do
St.
both.
Louis. Yeah, we do.
And you do St. Louis, and then St. Louis is, well,
You know,
tell us what St. Louis is. What's the definition of a St. Louis style rib?
Basically, it's a spare rib that the brisket end has been cut off, and you just cut it about 4 inches long all the way through. Get rid of the brisket, get rid of the diaphragm, pull the membrane off the back. The difference between that and a baby back is actually the spare rib rides a little bit higher on the pig, and rides a little bit lower on the pig than the baby back itself. The baby back has more of a curve to it. And one of the reasons we don't use them is because we have to put it into a turning box for at least 6 judges. And the curve of the rib makes it hard to put, we like to put 8 or 9 pieces in. Makes it hard to fill the box up because of the curve of the rib. So that's where, if you'll notice, spare ribs are cheaper than the baby backs. And that's why they have the saying, high on the hog. The higher on the hog that you go, the more expensive the cut of meat.
They
You get
call
up
them
to
spare ribs because they're spare. In other words, they
Exactly.
really want them.
You get up to the tenderloin, and then that's the most expensive pieces.
I told y'all this was gonna be a learning experience. I'm on the hog. I'm on the hog. Now, in my travels with Mr. Brown, we did one tour that started in North Carolina. We did Blues, Brews, and Barbecues up in Charlotte, and then worked our way all the way down to well into South Carolina. And everything I heard was an hour a pound. Is that, do you guys go by that? How long do you cook your? Now this was for huge. This was for roasting a pig. You know, what are your cooking instructions on ribs? How long? How hot?
Frying secrets here. Well, yeah, again, it depends on.
I tell you what, if you're doing it in your backyard,
It depends on the cooking equipment that you're using. If you're using a charcoal Weber kettle in your back grill, it's one technique over what we do with these sophisticated smokers we have at the restaurant, which is all indirect heat, which you can also accomplish on a Weber kettle grill, versus basically direct heat, which is what you do. All good products, it's just a personal preference, but there are different methods for what you are trying to achieve based on your personal preferences.
I would add to that most folks like fall off the bone ribs, and in a competition, that's overcooked. In a competition, when you take a bite off of a rib, you should see your teeth marks. Nothing else coming off. That's it. No pull. It should just be what you bite. And a good backyard way to do it is roughly, we call it 3-1-1, where you would cook the ribs for 3 hours, just bone down. Cook them about 3 hours. We go by pull. We look at the bone. When the meat starts to pull, we use the Texas Crunch foil. We'll put them in some foil with a little bit of apple juice to help steam the ribs, get us a little more pull. Then we'll pull them out for 1 more hour. We'll put them back on the grill and baste them.
The foil is the biggest tip I would probably give anybody that's trying to cook ribs. I don't know if you consider it really cheating, but if you have a cheaper kind of equipment, it's really hard to put ribs out there and have them come out looking nice. They're going to turn dark on you. They're going to dry out, and so why fight it? If you get the color you want, when they start looking nice, you say, man, I want to serve them that way. That's when you foil them. And put a little liquid in there, you're actually braising them, which helps tenderize it. They're not going to change color after that. So you're just finishing the cooking process. Another thing about foiling is you're stopping the smoke. Now, smoke is a spice, and so you can put too much of it on there. After about 3 hours, you've got enough smoke on those ribs typically that you don't really need anymore. So that foiling helps with that also. Then the last thing that you gotta watch, when you take them out of the foil, they're gonna be wet. And you don't wanna serve them like that. So Mike taught me, put them on there and he called tighten them up. But you just put them on there for an hour and that dries them back out and they're gonna really look nice. You can produce a nice looking rib on about any kind of equipment if you foil it. Even an offset smoker, which you don't want to get me started on those.
Don't get
I've fought
me
those
started.
things for years.
You graduated though. You come a long way.
Speaking of cheating, it's real hard for anybody that doesn't have a smoker or a pit built in their backyard to really do barbecue the way, especially these guys do it, or even the way we do it. You can cheat. You can take some ribs, turn them up sideways, pour some beer, onions, Worcestershire in a pan, cover it up tight with tin foil, poke a couple holes in it, put it in your oven for about 275, about 2.5 hours. Now these guys are gonna cringe.
Did he say
Because,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you why, because this to us isn't real barbecue. But if you wanna cheat and get a you're gonna get all your flavor from the sauce. You're in a pinch, you got people coming over and you don't wanna mess them up. Leave them in there, let the beer steam up through the meat, and then take them off, put them on the grill, and put your sauce on there to give it color. That's not true barbecue the way we think of it. We think you should be able to eat the meat with no sauce on it and be able to taste color, texture, taste. We put salt on our ribs, salt, tenderness, that kind of stuff. And I know these guys, without even saying it, feel like you should be able to eat barbecue with no sauce on it to taste your meat, to really see how the barbecue really is. If you want to cheat, do what I said, and I'll tell you, they will fall off the bone, even spare ribs. I know this because when I managed McGuire's, that's how we did it. It wasn't a real barbecue.
There's a lot.
Everybody loved it. He won a lot of awards.
There's a lot of high-end restaurants. Ray's on the River is one. A couple places up in Milton that I know for a fact that boil their ribs. And and they just, that's what the customers like. You would have to eat some of my ribs now. I can because some people, they just, that's what they like is I had my secretary the other day tell me, she goes, oh, we cooked ribs at the house, they would fall off the bone. I was like, well, you should have stopped cooking them. Oh, they were great. But that's what you like. And that's where I kind of have a problem with, we've been doing competition barbecue now about 7 years, and I'm a barbecue snob. My wife and kids will tell you, it's just, I just take it to the extent that, some teriyaki ribs would probably be pretty good sometime, but that's not how we do it at my house. I'm sorry, girls. We'll let Dave post tonight. How about that?
Well, I tell you, the effect it's had on me is I've stopped eating any kind of baby back ribs at any of the restaurants. And it's not because they're not good, and I didn't used to love them, but it's almost a religion. If they're not really difficult to make, then you go through all this painful process, and we like to think that it's not the best you can be. But people come up to me and say, I really make good ribs, and you can. You don't have to go through all this stuff to make some really good ribs. We just do it the hard way, I guess.
Sometimes the baby backs you get at the franchise restaurants, the Applebee's and places like that, I think that sauce tastes more like cupcake frosting than it does barbecue sauce. Just no thank you. No thank you, I'll go agree with it. And I've got an invitation to go to Dave's. He's going to invite me to dinner, so I'm going to give that a shot too. But yeah, it was
free.
well, yeah, Dreamlands charges me too. So,
I eat for free at Pete's.
Yeah, that's right.
Can we talk about, I don't know about in your restaurants, but in your competitions, I remember, people, and they're very generous with their recipes generally at these barbecue competitions, but the rubs can be very elaborate. And so do you do rubs on your
Yes, we do.
ribs?
Yes, we do.
And are you willing to share at least some of the ingredients?
Absolutely. One thing about barbecue, when it comes to putting a plate in front of the judge, is that the first thing is appearance. And brown is bad, red is good. And brown will come from putting sugar of some kind on your ribs too early. The sugar typically burns at about 260 degrees. We use a lot of turbinado sugar, which burns at over 300 degrees. So that's a little tip for you there. One of the things that helps us get the red color into our ribs is paprika. And we use all fresh spices. We use Hungarian paprika. We actually use a
That'll cost you a penny, won't it?
well, shipping knocks your feet off the market. But
They
we
did,
have,
incidentally, not to interrupt, but they did have Hungarian paprika in the barbecued Hungarian goulash that I had in Budapest.
who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
But the rub that we use, you can buy online. This is not rocket science. We actually had someone, a world champion, about 6 years ago, was set up next to us in Cartersville, and just took a liking to us and told us how to do it. The learning curve is not nearly what it would have been without his help. And so his name is Old Dave Stamper from Indiana. So I definitely want to give him some kudos on that. Well, one of the things about a rub, I will say, is that if you have a lot of salt in your rub, you don't want to leave it on your meat very long before you cook it because it will dry it out. I've seen some cooks, and I love it when they do it. They rub their ribs the night before they cook them. And, I'll show them where they missed a spot sometimes. But when it comes to rub, that's where our heat comes in. Our sauce is sweet. You get the flavor of the meat, and then you'll get the heat in the end from the rub. So.
If y'all want to try to make your own rub, there is the best rub recipe I've run into, and I mean I'm comparing competition rubs with this stuff, is on cooksillustrated.com. You can get a 14-day free trial, and it's called a spicy rub for brisket, and it's got about 20 ingredients in it, but it's really a nice rub. The only thing I tell you about rubs is the quality of ingredients makes a difference. Buy some good Hungarian paprika and then buy the cheap Kroger stuff and just taste them and you won't recognize it. Same thing with chili powder, which is another big ingredient in there. You take some Mexican chili powder compared to the other, you just can't believe the difference in flavor. So the quality of ingredients does make a difference when you're talking about. The other thing, we don't use a lot of rub on the ribs because it's a really thin piece of meat, so you kind of have to go easy on it. Don't dump it on. So if you're using a little bit of it, you really want those spices to be just right. So Cooks Illustrated, spicy brisket rub, 14-day free trial, gets you a really good rub. And you can say I made my own.
I think we have 16 ingredients in the rub that we make for the pork and the brisket, and 18 in the rub for the chicken and the ribs. The difference is the sugar that you mentioned before. When you go from a 16-hour cooking process, you don't want to have sugar in there because it turns everything black. The sugar caramelizes, just doesn't. It tastes good, but it doesn't look good. So that's the difference. In the shorter cooking time, we add the sugar, white sugar, brown sugar, or say the ribs and the chicken. We're on the long cooking processes for the pork and the brisket. The sugar's left out. And the same with the chili powder. We use an anchovy chili powder. We use. It's like you start with like paprika and maybe a little bit of salt of some description, whether it's seasoning salt or whatever, but that can overpower whatever you're cooking, and you have to be, like I stated before, very careful as to how much you put on because you can just totally douse it where you can run your finger across it after it's cooked and come off with nothing but rub all over your finger. And it just totally will ruin it if you're not careful.
You mentioned earlier basting. You baste with what, vinegar, buddy? What do you baste with?
80% white vinegar and 20% Dreamland sauce when we based our pork butts, which I know we haven't talked much about, and then it's 80% Dreamland sauce and 20% white vinegar when we're basting our ribs. And we put the vinegar in there to cut it down so it don't burn. And we really don't have sugar in our sauce, but it'll still burn if you put it on full strength. You better dilute it down some, or you'll still burn up an expensive cut of meat. Meat's not getting cheaper.
That's
Meat
true.
don't- you got to see if you're paying for the ribs.
Wow.
But, I mean, they're unbelievable.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I mean, you know, we talk and bicker about this, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but I think that the one thing that's universal from everything I've ever heard is what Mike was saying. You just don't put the sauce on it until maybe the last minute or even after the ribs come off the grill, and serve it warm. And I think these are fairly universal from the competitions that I have witnessed, a universal opinion of everybody. Now, I know we're probably talking about, you know, when you pull into a place with a TV crew and people are running around with cameras and microphones and stuff, and they're trying to put their best. We went to a pig picking in York, South Carolina. They grilled half the pig for us. Let me tell you the story about this guy, okay? In this York, South Carolina, tiny little town, rural place, and he has what he calls his pig palace, okay? His man cave. And it's about the size of a 6-car garage. And how this happened was, one night, he's always been into barbecuing, he's always been does the competitions. One night he had, I think it was a half a pig, it may have been a whole pig, and he didn't have anything big enough to store it in. So he brought it into his house and he put it in his bathtub and put ice on it. And he didn't tell his wife. You guys remember the shower scene from Psycho? This is what happened at this guy's house. And the next day, she said, build another house. And so he's got this great place where he's got all of this barbecue stuff. And we rolled in there, and there were 50 people who were there for a pig picking. Learned how to grill peaches. That was outstanding. It was just outstanding. But he had a big conversation. The main thing he wanted to talk with us about was he was grilling this pig, was he had somebody who with surgical precision was pulling all of the fat off of the meat so that he could rub directly into the meat. And then there are some people who just go ahead and rub it right into the fat. What's your opinion? If you have one.
We'll start that.
Whole hogs.
Whole hog. We're going whole hog.
That's a whole other animal right there. I
So to
mean,
speak.
You go to a competition, you see, sometimes you have pigs with the back up in the air. The team next to you has split the pig open and the fat side's down and it's spread wide open, which gives you a better opportunity to rub and marinate and so forth with your meat. However, there are pros and cons to that. The disadvantage is if it's feet down, so to speak, with the back up in the air, you have that layer of fat under the skin that's coming down on the meat. And this is before you get into injections and marinades and whatever, and that's just like talking about rubs. It's personal preference and what works. Either way works. I mean, we were doing Memphis in May one time, I remember, and I cooked the most beautiful hog I'd ever cooked in my life. First time there, had it garnished, everything else, and waiting for the judges to come by, and the lady came by and tore the ear off the pig and just blended into the crowd. And here came the judge. You guys weren't at that one, did you?
No, not that one. We'll keep an ear out for you, though.
That's just one of those personal preference things. I mean, what I've seen more is with the back side down and the pig just totally open, and people taking injections and whatnot, marinating meat throughout the course of the process, and with the rub also.
I would liken that, I know this is kind of a change of style here, but to a spatchcock chicken. Whereas you cut the backbone out, you spread him out, and basically you cook him, lay it out. Rubs and spices aren't going to penetrate the skin, and so therefore, on the hogs that you were talking about, when you spread them out, they would rub on the inside, because rub on the outside is really not going to do anything for you.
Not bad.
Right, and so that's one thing I look at it is that when we, for instance, when we rub our pork butts, we trim them as well as possible so there's no surface fat, because we're not going to get any crust on and flavor through the fat. So we do try to cook cook a piece of meat as opposed to a piece of meat that's got fat on it.
That's a big secret right there, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Another thing I've seen is people that actually open the pig up and then the rubs, the marinades, whatever it might be, and then actually sew the pig back up, flip it back over, and cook it with the backside up.
I have done that. I have done it like
I
that.
mean, different methods, different techniques. So-
You guys know what an emu is? It's not a bird.
Mhm.
What an emu is, so one of the reasons I sold it to Dad, when I went around the world with Rick Brown, was he took me to Maui. And the way they do the whole hog is what they call an emu, which is a hole in the ground, which has got volcanic rock in it. And then on top of the volcanic rock, they put banana leaves. And then they put the whole pig, they brought it in on a, looked like a stretcher, and it had a little tag on its ear. This eagle was still on the pig. It had a little tag on its ear, and I went over and looked at it, and it said product of Ames, Iowa. And anyway, they took it, and they put it banana wood then, and they put it in this thing, and they cover it up, they set fire to the wood, they cover it up with canvas and sheets, and wet sheets and canvas, and they leave it there. It gets up to about 800 degrees in that pit, and they leave it there for 8 hours, and come and get it later in the day, and there's no rub, there's no nothing. They take that thing out of there, and it is outstanding. The banana actually is the rub, the sauce, and the moistening agent. You know, there's water in the sheets, and oh my goodness, that's how you have a luau. That was outstanding, just absolutely outstanding. If you guys have any questions, jump right in, because we can talk about anything you want to talk about.
Have any of you fellows eaten a Puerto Rican roast pig?
I did, I was born and raised in Miami, I think I have a Cuban and Puerto Rican roast pig.
That is good. It's nothing like barbecue, but it's got an outstanding, but I think it's got something to do with the soil on the island of Puerto Rico and what they eat down, what the pigs eat down there, because I've never been able to replicate that up here, but that is some outstanding eating. About 3 weeks ago, my wife and I went to New Bern, North Carolina, and 2 years ago, she had cut out this little article from Gourmet Magazine about a place in Ayden, North Carolina. You ever heard of it? Ayden, North Carolina. And the description of their barbecue was mouth-watering. And she had carried this little article around with her for 2 years. So here we get to Ayden, to New Bern.
That's called a hankering.
And that's what she had, believe you me. So Ayden is about 37 miles from New Bern. So one evening we hopped in the car and drove 37 miles to Ayden, North Carolina, which consisted of a street with a row of houses on either side. And way down at the end there's this lighthouse type looking thing. And the lighthouse belonged to Starlight Barbecue. And we went inside, and there were a bunch of tables and chairs, you know, very homey type thing, a few customers around, and they gave us a cardboard tray and filled that up with barbecue and then a piece of unleavened cornbread. No worst stuff I've ever eaten in my life. It was horrible. The cornbread, not the barbecue was pretty good. But the point of the story is we traveled 80 miles round trip to go eat this stuff.
You're a trooper.
And I could have gone to Old Charlie's and just